The great hall of Valmora Keep was silent, except for the crackling of torches that lined its stone walls. Shadows danced across banners bearing the sigil of the Silverfang Pack, an emblem of dominance, conquest, and rule. No one dared breathe too loudly. The Alpha King was in a mood that made even the air tremble. Kael sat on his throne, shoulders broad and posture rigid, a heavy cloak spilling over the marble steps. His golden eyes glowed faintly, not with warmth, but with the restrained fury of a beast barely caged. Every movement he made carried command, even in stillness. Before him, on her knees, was a girl. No, a woman, though her fragility made her seem smaller. Her wrists were bound with silver-threaded rope that shimmered faintly in the torchlight. Her head was bowed, a loose veil of white cloth covering half her face and shoulder. She didn't tremble, not even under his gaze. That, more than anything, caught Kael's attention. "Raise your head," Kael ordered, his voice low, almost a growl. The woman hesitated before lifting her chin slightly. The cloth shifted, and he caught a glimpse of pale skin, smooth and marked by faint traces of something beneath. A scar? A sigil? He couldn't tell. But when her green eyes met his, it was as if the world outside the hall ceased to exist. The Alpha King leaned forward. There was no scent of fear. Only calm. Sweet. Warm. Wrong. Because beneath it lay something else, a whisper of wolf scent that didn't belong to any rank he'd ever known. "You dare hide your face before your king?" His words echoed through the chamber. Her lips parted, her voice soft, carrying the faint tremor of someone both fragile and strong. "I was told, my lord, that no one should look into the eyes of an Omega." The room went cold. Every soldier present lowered his gaze, as if afraid to hear what might follow. "Omega?" Kael repeated, his voice sharpening. "You speak the word as though it were not a curse." "I am what I am," she replied quietly, eyes flickering downward again. "But I did not choose to be." Kael rose from his throne slowly, the weight of his presence making the air feel heavier. He descended the steps, boots striking against stone, the echo filling the vast room. When he stopped before her, she didn't flinch. That was unusual. Most Omegas trembled merely hearing his name. "You stand in my hall," he murmured, circling her. "You wear a healer's mark, yet your scent is hidden. And that cloth," he stopped behind her. "Why do you cover it?" Her fingers tightened against the rope. "It is forbidden, my king." That answer alone stirred something wild inside him. He crouched to her level, lowering his voice until it brushed her ear. "Everything forbidden tempts me." She inhaled sharply, not from fear, but from something that felt dangerously close to longing. He could feel it in her heartbeat, the way her pulse betrayed calm beneath her quiet mask. Kael's wolf stirred restlessly within, pacing, scenting, tasting the air. The instinct to claim, to dominate, to know her burned hot beneath his skin. But he resisted. Barely. He straightened, signaling his guards with a flick of his hand. "Unbind her." "My king, she's an Omega," one of them protested. "Unbind her," Kael repeated. "She's under my protection now." The command was absolute. No one argued further. The ropes fell away, and she rubbed her wrist slowly, leaving faint red marks. He watched the small movements of her hands, the way her breath steadied, too poised for someone brought before an Alpha King. "What's your name?" Kael asked. "Lyra." He tested the name under his breath. Lyra. It fit her, soft, melodic, deceptively gentle. But there was something buried deep within her tone, something he couldn't name. "You'll stay in the healer's quarters until I decide what to do with you," he said, voice low. "Corin will escort you." Lyra lifted her eyes again. "I don't need protection, my king." Kael's lips curved faintly, though it wasn't amusement, it was disbelief. "In this kingdom, everyone needs protection. Even me." When she was led away, his gaze followed her until the last glimmer of her white cloth disappeared beyond the door. And still, her scent lingered, wrapping around his senses like the pull of the moon. That night, Kael couldn't sleep. He sat by the window of his chamber, staring into the silver-lit forest that spread beyond the keep. Every instinct told him to stay away. An Omega in his court was a scandal, an omen of weakness. Yet his wolf, his untamable half, howled for her. He poured himself a drink of amber liquid, but it didn't still the ache. The memory of her voice haunted him, the calmness, the way her words brushed against his command like silk against steel. He had faced wars, rebellions, assassins. But this woman, this Lyra, with her quiet defiance, was more dangerous than all of them. A knock broke his thoughts. "Enter," he called. Beta Corin stepped inside, bowing slightly. The Omega is settled in the healer's quarters, my king. Kael didn't turn. And? She asked for herbs. For a fever tonic. Not for herself. For whom? For the children in the lower village. She said they'll need it by dawn. That tugged at something in Kael he didn't want to name. Compassion had long been a weakness he buried deep. But the image of her, kneeling, calm, veiled, lingered. Leave her be, Kael said finally. No one is to approach her without my permission. Corin hesitated. There's one more thing. The mark beneath her cloth, it glowed when she entered the hall. Some of the guards saw it. Kael turned then, golden eyes sharp. Glowed? Yes, my king. Faintly. Like a binding mark. A long silence stretched between them. Kael's voice, when it came, was low and dangerous. If that's true, then she isn't just an Omega. The next morning, Lyra woke to the sound of rain tapping softly against the window. The healer's quarters were small, tucked beside the courtyard where the roses grew wild and untamed. She sat at the edge of her bed, fingers brushing the edge of the cloth over her shoulder. Beneath it, the mark pulsed faintly, always hidden, always waiting. She closed her eyes, breathing slowly. She had promised herself she'd never let another Alpha see it. Not again. A soft knock came. When she opened the door, she was met not by a guard, but by Kael himself. He filled the doorway, broad, towering, every movement radiating power. I see you don't kneel in private, he said, voice calm but amused. I'm not in your hall, my king, she replied. His lips curved faintly. Brave words for someone who stands in my keep. He stepped inside, and the room suddenly felt too small, too warm. Lyra's pulse quickened as he moved closer, his scent, cedar, smoke, and something darker, brushing against her senses. Kael looked around, noting the herbs hanging from the ceiling, the simple bed, the single cup of tea she'd left untouched. You work even when unasked, he said. A healer's habit. It's what I am. You keep saying that, Kael said quietly, stepping closer until there were only inches between them. But I don't believe you're only what you say you are. Lyra's breath caught. His presence was overwhelming, commanding, magnetic, dangerous. She could feel the heat radiating from him, could hear the faint, steady rhythm of his heart. His gaze lingered on the edge of her veil, on the faint shimmer where the cloth met skin. Why do you hide it? He asked softly. Her voice trembled just slightly. Because if you see it, you'll wish you hadn't. He reached out, fingers brushing near her shoulder but not touching. You think you can warn me? I'm trying to protect you, she whispered. That caught him off guard. No one ever said that to him. Kael's hand hovered midair, then fell away. You speak as if I'm the one in danger. Lyra turned slightly, stepping back. Everyone who's seen it has either feared me, or wanted to destroy me. Kael's jaw tightened. Who marked you? Her silence was answer enough. He took a breath, forcing restraint. The air between them pulsed with unspoken energy. Very well, he said quietly. I won't ask again. Not yet. He turned to leave, but her voice stopped him at the door. My king, do you believe in fate? Kael looked back, eyes narrowing. I've fought it my entire life. Then perhaps, she said softly, we have that in common. That night, when the rain turned into a storm, Kael found himself walking again, past the torches, past the stone halls, until he reached the healer's quarters. He told himself he only came to make sure she was safe. But the truth burned hotter than that. He stood outside her door for a long time before knocking. Lyra opened it, wearing a simple gown, her hair damp and loose. She froze when she saw him, the candlelight behind her painting her in soft gold. My king, she breathed. He didn't speak. For once, words failed him. When lightning flashed outside, the room lit up, and he saw her eyes, clear and full of something he couldn't name. Trust, perhaps. Or something far more dangerous. You shouldn't be here, she said softly. I know, Kael replied. But I couldn't stay away. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. The air was thick with silence, broken only by the sound of rain. She looked up at him, and for a moment, neither moved. Then Kael lifted his hand slowly, brushing a damp strand of hair from her cheek. She shivered, not in fear, but in something that felt like surrender. His voice was low. Tell me to leave. She didn't. He leaned closer, close enough that his breath warmed her skin. Tell me, Lyra. Her lips parted, trembling slightly. You won't listen. No, he whispered. I won't. Their eyes locked, and the distance between them vanished. His hand moved to her waist, gentle but firm, as though testing a boundary that no longer existed. She tilted her head back, breath uneven, heartbeat wild. The storm outside roared louder, mirroring the chaos inside them. For a fleeting second, Kael hesitated, the king within him warring against the wolf. But when her hand brushed his chest, when her fingers curled into his cloak, the last thread of restraint broke. He pulled her close, and the world fell away. It wasn't a kiss meant to conquer. It was a collision, of fate, of hunger, of everything they weren't supposed to feel. His touch was fire against her skin, his breath a promise and a curse. She melted into him, soft against strength, every heartbeat an echo of something ancient and inevitable. When he finally pulled back, both were trembling. Her cloth had slipped slightly, revealing the faint glow of the mark beneath. Kael's gaze lingered there, his hand reaching instinctively. Please, she whispered, voice breaking. Don't take the cloth off. The plea hit him like a strike to the chest. He froze, wolf and man both fighting for control. Her eyes met his, shining with fear, with want, with something that felt like prophecy. He exhaled slowly, pressing his forehead to hers. Not tonight, he said softly. But soon. And when the storm outside swallowed the last flicker of candlelight, the world faded to black. Morning returned with a pale mist that rolled through Valmora Keep and softened the hard edges of stone. The storm had passed, but its memory still hummed in the air. Kael rose early, though he had not truly slept. Each time he closed his eyes he saw Lyra's face in the candlelight, heard her whisper, "Please, don't take the cloth off." It had burrowed under his skin like a song that would not end. He dressed in silence, the heavy cloak of an Alpha King resting on his shoulders like armor. He told himself the restlessness was nothing, just curiosity, a passing fascination with the unknown. Yet the wolf within him prowled restlessly, pacing behind the cage of his ribs. When Kael entered the courtyard, the scent reached him first. It drifted on the cool morning air, warm honey and crushed petals, faint but impossible to ignore. Every warrior nearby stiffened, heads lifting unconsciously to breathe it in. A scent that soothed, yet stirred. It made the blood quicken. It carried a note of danger. Kael's voice broke the spell. "What is that?" A guard stammered, "The healer, my king. She's tending the children from the village." Kael's jaw tightened. Lyra. He found her near the training grounds, kneeling beside a line of small children wrapped in thin blankets. Her sleeves were rolled, hands steady as she mixed herbs into a steaming bowl. The scent came from her work, mint, fever leaf, and the undertone that was wholly her own. The soldiers watched from a distance, their discipline fraying under the quiet pull of her presence. Lyra looked up when she sensed him. For a moment, her expression softened, then quickly smoothed into calm composure. "My king," she said, bowing her head. Kael dismissed the guards with a flick of his hand. When they were alone, he stepped closer, his shadow falling across her. "You shouldn't be out here without protection." "I'm healing them," she said simply. "Protection distracts them." "You're distracting my warriors," he said, voice low. Lyra blinked once. "Then perhaps you should teach them to look away." For an instant Kael forgot how to breathe. The words weren't defiance, they were truth, spoken without fear. He should have been angry. Instead, a reluctant smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "You test me, healer. I only answer honestly." He crouched beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost brushed. The faint heat of her body reached him, the wolf in him strained forward. "What are you?" he murmured. "No Omega has ever looked an alpha in the eyes like this." Lyra stirred the bowl, pretending not to notice the weight of his gaze. "Perhaps you've never met one who wasn't afraid." Her calm unraveled something inside him. He reached for the bowl, his fingers brushing hers as he took it. The contact was brief, but it lit a spark that traveled through both of them. Her breath caught, his hand tightened around the edge of the wood. Kael steadied himself. "Go back to the keep when you're done. And stay there." It sounded like a command. It was a plea. Lyra bowed her head again, though her voice carried a faint tremor of warmth. "As you wish, my king." By nightfall the keep felt different. Servants whispered that the Alpha was pacing again, that his wolf was restless. The scent of the Omega lingered in the corridors no matter how many torches they lit. It threaded through Kael's senses until he could almost taste it. He stood on the balcony outside his chamber, the wind cold against his skin. He should have been thinking of council matters, of border patrols and treaties. Instead he thought of a healer's steady hands, of green eyes that had seen straight through him. A voice interrupted his thoughts. You're losing focus. Kael turned sharply. Corin stepped from the shadows, arms crossed. You've been distracted ever since she arrived. Kael exhaled slowly. She's unusual. She's dangerous, Corin corrected. The gods talk about her scent. It stirs instincts they can't control. If it affects them, it could affect you worse. Kael's golden eyes hardened. I control myself. Corin didn't argue. He only looked at his king with quiet worry. Be careful, Kael. Some bonds are born from magic, not choice. When Corin left, Kael's grip tightened on the stone railing. Magic. The word echoed through him like thunder. Down in her quarters, Lyra was grinding herbs by candlelight. She had felt his presence earlier in the day, an invisible thread pulling between them, stretching until it almost hurt. Her mark pulsed faintly beneath the cloth, answering a call she hadn't meant to send. A soft knock came. She froze, heart leaping. Who is it? It's me, Kael's voice answered. She hesitated, then opened the door. He looked tired, his cloak damp from the rain that had started again. But his eyes, those golden eyes, burned with something she couldn't name. I couldn't sleep, he said simply. Lyra stepped aside. He entered, shutting the door behind him. The small room seemed to shrink around them, filled with the scent of herbs and storm air. She poured tea without speaking and handed him a cup. Their fingers touched briefly, and both drew a breath. Kael sat by the fire, studying her. When I first saw you, I thought you were pretending. Now I'm not sure which part of you is the act. I don't pretend, she said quietly. Not anymore. He watched the flames dance in her eyes. The mark beneath the cloth, it glows, doesn't it? She flinched, setting her cup down. Who told you? My beater saw it. Lyra folded her hands in her lap. Then he should know what it means. Kael leaned forward. Tell me. Silence stretched between them. The only sound was the rain tapping against the window. Finally, she whispered, it's a binding mark. Not of my choosing. His jaw tightened. Who bound you? The last alpha I healed, she said. He wanted to own me. When I refused, he cursed my bond. The cloth keeps it from spreading. Kael's anger flickered like a spark. A curse that binds an omega? That's forbidden magic. Lyra nodded slowly. That's why I hide it. He rose, standing over her. Then why come here? Why risk my wrath? Because your kingdom is dying, she said, voice trembling with truth. And you needed a healer. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he knelt before her, taking her hands carefully between his. You should have told me sooner. Would you have believed me? His grip softened. No, he admitted. But I would have tried. Their eyes met, and the air thickened. His thumb brushed over her knuckles, slow and deliberate. She didn't pull away. The firelight painted gold on his skin, catching in his hair, tracing the lines of a face both fierce and heartbreakingly human. Your scent, he murmured. It calls to me. Lyra's breath shivered out. Then resisted. I've tried. His voice was rough. The more I fight it, the worse it gets. She stood abruptly, needing distance, but he followed, stopping inches behind her. His warmth wrapped around her like a storm about to break. Kael, she whispered, daring to use his name. If you cross this line, there's no turning back. He reached up, fingers hovering just above her shoulder, close enough to feel the faint hum of the hidden mark. The power between them crackled like lightning. I don't want to turn back, he said. Her eyes closed. For one heartbeat, she leaned toward him, surrender written in the curve of her lips. Then the candle sputtered, throwing them into darkness. The sound of her quick breath filled the space, his voice came softer than the rain outside. Not yet, he whispered. I promised I wouldn't lift the cloth. She opened her eyes, meeting his gaze in the dim light. Then what do you want, my king? His answer was barely a breath. To understand why the scent of you feels like home. The storm raged outside, but inside the room the silence felt sacred. He reached up and touched a lock of her hair, letting it slip through his fingers as though it was something fragile and forbidden. Then he stepped back. Rest, Lyra, he said quietly. Tomorrow we'll speak of cures and curses. When he left, the door closed softly behind him. Lyra pressed a hand over the cloth at her shoulder, feeling the faint glow pulse once, twice, like a heartbeat answering another across the night. And far down the corridor, Kael paused, turning his face toward the wind. Her scent lingered there, wild, healing, dangerous. The scent of an Omega who might yet change the fate of kings. The night dragged on without mercy. Sleep refused to come to either of them. Kael stood at the window of his chamber, bare-chested, the moonlight tracing sharp lines across his muscles. The fire in the hearth had long burned low, but the heat within him remained, an ache that no cold wind could soothe. He could still smell her. Even after he left her room, Lyra's scent clung to him like a secret. Honey and herbs. Wildness and warmth. The scent of danger wearing the skin of mercy. The beast within him stirred, restless and hungry. He had known temptation before, women who threw themselves at the Alpha King, Omegas who bowed under his gaze. But none had ever unsettled him. None had made him feel like this. As if one wrong move could either destroy him or save him entirely. Kael closed his eyes. He saw her hands, steady and soft. He heard her voice, gentle, but unyielding. And he remembered the way she'd said his name. His wolf snarled low inside him, urging him to claim. His mind whispered to protect. His heart did something worse, it began to want. Lyra, meanwhile, lay awake in her narrow bed, staring at the dark wooden beams above her. Every part of her body felt aware, her heartbeat, her breathing, the faint pulse beneath the cloth on her shoulder. The mark had begun to react the moment Kael touched her skin. It shimmered faintly under the fabric, glowing in rhythm with her pulse. She pressed a palm over it, whispering a silent plea. Please, not now. She had spent years hiding it, years running from the curse that tied her scent to power. When an alpha neared her, it amplified, stoking his instincts, drawing him closer until reason shattered. That was the curse, to be irresistible to those who could destroy her. But Kael? Kael was different. He hadn't forced, hadn't claimed. He had stopped. And that restraint frightened her more than anything else. Because it made her want him too. She rose quietly, wrapping a thin cloak around her shoulders. She needed air. Maybe the wind could steal away his scent from her lungs, or the memory of his eyes from her thoughts. She slipped into the corridor, her bare feet silent on the cold stone floor. The keep slept around her, torches guttering low, banners whispering in the draught. The moon hung pale and watchful through narrow windows. But she wasn't alone. Kael was already there, leaning against the balcony rail at the far end of the hall, as if drawn by the same sleepless pull. When she appeared, he looked up, and for a heartbeat, neither spoke. Couldn't sleep either? He asked softly. Lyra shook her head, her voice barely above a whisper. No. The silence stretched again. Only the wind filled it, brushing through her hair, carrying her scent straight to him. Kael inhaled sharply, his wolf surging inside, clawing to break free. He gripped the stone rail until his knuckles whitened. Your scent, he rasped, it's stronger at night. I can't help that, she said, her tone fragile but honest. I know. His voice softened. I don't want you to hide what you are. Lyra turned to him, eyes shimmering with the reflection of starlight. You say that now. But when the mark fully awakens, you'll feel it. You'll want to. To what? His voice dropped lower, husky, dangerous. Her breath caught. To claim me. Kael stepped closer, his shadow merging with hers. The air between them thickened with tension, their heartbeats falling into the same rhythm. He stopped only inches away, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. You think I don't already want to? Her pulse fluttered wildly. Then why don't you? He leaned in until his breath brushed her ear. Because wanting and deserving are not the same. Lyra trembled. His restraint burned hotter than any touch could. She turned her face slightly toward him, her lips almost brushing his jaw. You're fighting yourself. He gave a soft, humorless laugh. Every second. For a long moment, neither moved. The world seemed to narrow to just the two of them, the whisper of her breath, the thunder of his pulse, the pull between them that felt older than either of their names. Kael reached out slowly, his hand rising to cup her cheek. His thumb brushed her skin, tracing along her jawline. Her eyes fluttered closed, and she leaned into his touch before she could stop herself. Lyra, he whispered, her name tasting like a confession. Her lips parted slightly, as if to answer, but no sound came. Then his other hand found the edge of her cloak. He lifted it slightly, not enough to reveal the mark, only enough to feel the warmth of her shoulder through the cloth. She gasped softly, eyes opening, and for a heartbeat, everything stilled. Please, she whispered again. Don't take it off. He froze, breath uneven. Her words echoed the first night they met, but this time they held something else, pleading, fear, and longing all tangled together. I won't, he promised hoarsely. But one day, you'll tell me why you fear it so much. Lyra looked up at him, eyes bright with something fragile. Because it's not just a curse, Kael. It's a bond. It connects to whoever touches it. And if you... He cut her off gently. Then I'll wait until you want me to. Her breath hitched again. The restraint, the softness, it undid her more than desire ever could. Before she could think, she rose on her toes, closing the tiny distance between them. Her lips brushed his, featherlight, a whisper of a kiss that felt like a promise and a warning at once. Kael didn't move. He stood perfectly still, as if afraid one more breath would break the moment. Then, slowly, he kissed her back. It wasn't deep or wild. It was aching. Controlled. Like a man memorizing the shape of something he could never have again. When they parted, their foreheads rested together, breaths mingling in the cold night air. I shouldn't have, she whispered, trembling. I know, he said quietly. But neither of us stopped. He stepped back first, eyes dark with something unreadable. Go inside, Lyra. Before I forget every reason I shouldn't touch you. She obeyed, though her legs felt weak. At the doorway, she turned once more. You won't tell anyone about the mark. Not unless you want me to, he said. Your secret's safe with me. She gave a faint nod and slipped into the shadows. The door closed softly behind her. Kael remained on the balcony long after she was gone. The wind chilled his skin, but his body burned. He pressed a hand over his chest, where his heartbeat thundered like war drums. His wolf whispered inside him, she's ours. He clenched his jaw. No, he growled aloud. Not yet. But even as he said it, he knew it was already too late. Something had begun between them, something primal, inevitable. The mark, the scent, the bond. It was pulling them closer with every breath they shed. And deep in the mountains beyond Valmora, the curse that had once bound Lyra began to stir. A shadow opened its eyes, sensing that its mark had been touched by another alpha's soul. The night after their first kiss did not bring rest. Kael's entire body felt caught between fever and frost. Every heartbeat carried the echo of her lips, every breath drew her scent back into his lungs. He tried to train, to drown himself in discipline, but his sword arm trembled with distraction. The wolf within him had found its mate. The king within him refused to admit it. When dawn broke, the world outside looked ordinary, but inside Valmora keep something invisible had shifted. Torches burned lower than usual. Servants whispered of strange drafts, of shadows that rippled against walls as if alive. The air itself carried a hum, a low, restless vibration that neither human nor wolf could name. Kael felt it most near the healer's wing. He found Lyra in the courtyard garden, kneeling beside a pool where silver fish moved lazily under thin ice. Her fingers hovered just above the surface, tracing circles that melted frost wherever they touched. She looked up at his approach, calm but wary. You shouldn't be here, she murmured. Neither should you, he said. You need rest. Her lips curved slightly. Rest doesn't come easily anymore. Kael crouched beside her. Because of the curse. Because of you. The words struck harder than any blade. He should have turned away, but he didn't. Her honesty dragged him closer, until his reflection joined hers in the pool, the Alpha King and the marked Omega, side by side in fragile truce. Later that day, the first signs of danger appeared. A guard collapsed mid-training, his pulse erratic, his eyes flickering silver. When Kael knelt beside him, the scent of dark magic bled from the man's skin, the same hum that haunted the corridors. Lyra arrived seconds later. She pressed a palm to the soldier's chest, chanting low in a language older than the kingdom. Light pulsed beneath her cloth-bound mark. The guard gasped, the color returning to his face, but the light didn't fade. It spread, weaving into the air like threads of fire. Kael caught her wrist. Enough. You'll burn yourself out. I can't stop it, she gasped. It's answering you. The glow leapt from her shoulder to his hand. Heat seared through him, not pain, but connection. Images flooded his mind, a chained wolf, a broken moon, blood dripping onto snow. When he released her, the light vanished, leaving both trembling. What did you see? She whispered. Something that wants you back, he said grimly. Something bound to you, and now to me. That evening, storm clouds gathered again. Thunder rolled over the mountains, heavy with warning. Lyra retreated to the library, desperate for answers in the dust-covered tomes. Kael followed, his presence filling the space like heat from a fire too close to control. You felt it too, she said without looking up. The mark responded to you. The curse is awake. He stepped behind her, close enough that his voice brushed the nape of her neck. Then teach me how to fight it. It's not a battle of claws or steel, she said softly. It feeds on emotion. The stronger our bond, the stronger it becomes. Then I should stay away from you. You won't, she replied, turning slowly to face him. Their eyes locked, gold meeting green. The air between them pulsed, every breath charged. His hand rose of its own accord, brushing a strand of hair from her face. She didn't move. The world outside the library vanished, only the rhythm of their breathing remained. Lyra whispered, Kael, if we give in to this, it will bind us forever. His voice dropped to a growl. I already feel bound. He took one step closer, then another, until their foreheads touched. The faint tremor in her hands matched the tremor in his heart. The curse pulsed in warning, yet neither drew back. Desire and danger became indistinguishable, a single heartbeat stretching into eternity. Then the candles guttered. The mark beneath her cloth flared bright enough to stain the room in crimson light. Kael caught her as her knees buckled, the glow spreading across her skin like living fire. She gasped, clutching his tunic. It's reacting to you, it thinks you're the one. He tightened his hold. Let it think what it wants. I'm not letting you fall. The light surged once more, then blinked out. Silence followed, thick and trembling. Her head rested against his chest, his heartbeat wild beneath her ear. He exhaled slowly, forcing his voice steady. Every time I touch you, something wakes, he said. Something I don't understand. Lyra looked up, tears shining. That's the curse's hunger, Kael. It feeds on the forbidden. The more we fight it, the stronger it becomes. He brushed his thumb across her cheek, eyes dark. Then maybe we stop fighting. She froze, not in fear, but in realization. The Alpha King, the man who ruled through iron will, was ready to burn his restraint for her. The storm outside broke then, lightning splitting the sky. For one breathless instant, the world drowned in silver light. Kael bent his head, lips close enough that she could feel the heat of every unspoken word. And just before desire could tip into ruin, the castle bell rang, a deep, urgent sound that tore them apart. Corin burst into the hall, soaked from the rain. My king. The northern wards have collapsed. The curse's energy is spreading beyond the keep. Lyra steadied herself, pulling the cloak tight around her glowing shoulder. It's seeking me. Kael's jaw hardened. Then it will have to face me first. She caught his arm. You can't fight what you don't understand. Then teach me, he said. But stay by my side. For the first time, she didn't argue. Something in his tone, part command, part plea, made refusal impossible. Together they moved through the torchlit corridors toward the storm, the hum of the curse following like a second heartbeat. And though neither spoke it aloud, both knew the truth. What bound them now was more than magic. It was hunger, dangerous, relentless, and fated. The rain had not stopped by morning. It fell in heavy sheets against the ancient stone, soaking the banners of Valmora until the crimson wolves on them looked as if they bled. Smoke rose from the torches that ringed the courtyard, hissing where water struck flame. The kingdom held its breath. Kael and Lyra stood at the center of that silence. Her hood was pulled low, his armor black with rain. Between them, the air still shimmered faintly, an invisible thread humming with power. The curse had followed them out of the keep, no longer hiding in walls or whispers. It wanted them close. Corin knelt near the fallen wardstones, tracing the broken runes. Every seal north of the river has failed, he said grimly. It's not spreading randomly, it's moving toward her. Lyra met Kael's gaze. Then the bond is real. Whatever your wolf touched in me last night, it woke the curse completely. Kael's jaw tightened. So we fight it together. Her eyes darkened. If we join our power, it will bind us. Permanently. I'd rather be bound than watch you die, he said. The words were quiet, but the conviction in them made her tremble. She wanted to argue, to remind him of duty, kingdom, destiny, but the storm drowned out her voice, and his hand found hers before she could try. Their fingers met, light against light. The world went white. They stood inside a vision of fire. The courtyard vanished, replaced by a circle of crimson flame. Above them, a moon split in half, bleeding silver. From the edges of the fire rose shapes, wolves without eyes, their forms flickering like smoke. Lyra's heart pounded. It's the curse's heart, she whispered. It's showing us what it wants. Kael drew his sword, but the metal melted in his grip, dissolving into sparks. The wolves didn't attack, they circled, chanting in a voice made of wind. One flesh. One soul. One flame. The heat intensified. Lyra staggered, clutching at the cloth over her mark. It blazed through the fabric, searing bright red. Kael caught her before she fell, his arm around her waist. His own skin burned where it touched hers, yet he didn't let go. "Look at me," he commanded. She did. The gold in his eyes had deepened to molten amber. His wolf was no longer caged. It saw her, not as healer, not as curse, but as mate, equal, mirror. The sight struck her harder than pain. The fire roared. Energy surged between them, light pouring from the mark and wrapping them both. The wolves howled once, then vanished. When the light faded, they were back in the courtyard, collapsed against each other, steam rising from the wet stone. Corin's voice sounded distant. The wards repaired themselves. Kael didn't hear him. His world was narrowed to Lyra, her breath against his throat, her heartbeat against his chest, the faint glow still linking them. The curse had taken its price, the bond of fire now tied them body and soul. She looked up, eyes wide. "Kael, we can feel each other." He nodded slowly. "And there's no undoing it." That night the keep felt alive. The torches burned steady for the first time in weeks, and the scent of ash was gone from the air. The curse had quieted, but its silence was the silence after a storm, a warning, not a promise. Kael sat by the hearth in the war room, staring into the flames. Lyra entered quietly, her hair damp from the baths, her cloak drawn close. She stopped a few paces away. "Your guards look at me differently now," she said softly. "They sense what happened," he replied. "They can smell the bond. Then I've doomed us both." He rose, crossing to her in 2 strides. "No. You've given us a chance." She shook her head, voice breaking. "The bond feeds on what we feel. If we lose control, if we want too much, it could burn through us." Kael's expression softened, the alpha replaced by the man beneath. "Then we learn control together." He lifted a hand to her cheek. She didn't flinch this time. The touch was warm, careful, reverent. The bond flared faintly, gold threading beneath their skin. She could feel his heartbeat echoing her own, faster, heavier, but steady. "Why are you not afraid?" she asked. "Because every king is ruled by something," he said. "Some by power. Some by fear. I'd rather be ruled by something worth dying for." For a moment, neither spoke. The fire cracked, thunder rolled far away. The space between them pulsed with something fragile and dangerous, desire, yes, but also trust. Lyra laid a hand over his heart. "It's still dangerous," she murmured. "So are you," he said, and the hint of a smile ghosted his lips. Before dawn, she woke to find him standing at the balcony again, watching the rain ease into mist. He turned as she approached, the faint glow of the bond still visible at his throat. "The curse isn't gone," he said quietly. "I can feel it moving at the edges of the bond, testing us." Lyra joined him. "It wants more fire. It feeds on connection." "Then we'll starve it," he said. "We'll master it." She looked up at him, uncertain. "And if it masters us?" He turned toward her, expression gentler than she'd ever seen. "Then we'll face it together. No more running. No more hiding behind cloth." Her hand went to the fabric covering her mark. Slowly, she untied the cord and let the strip of linen fall away. The mark shimmered, no longer angry red, but gold, like dawn light. Kael's breath caught. "It's beautiful," he said. "It's dangerous," she corrected. He nodded once. "So am I." They stood that way until the first rays of sun broke through the clouds, lighting the mountains in silver. The bond hummed quietly between them, alive, restless, waiting. Neither spoke the word love, but it was there, woven into the silence, fierce and unyielding as the fire that had bound them. The days that followed were deceptively calm. For the first time in weeks, the kingdom of Valmora breathed without fear. The black mist that once lingered over the mountains had thinned, the villagers returned to the markets, and the castle halls echoed again with laughter. Yet under that peace, something restless stirred, a faint tremor beneath the heartbeats of the bonded. Lyra felt it first. Every night, she woke to a whisper. A sound not of the world, soft, seductive, calling her name. When she turned, Kael would be there beside her, asleep but tense, his brow furrowed as if fighting dreams he couldn't escape. Sometimes his hands would reach for her in his sleep, fingers trembling, as if seeking the warmth of the bond. One night, she couldn't bear it anymore. "Kael," she whispered. He stirred, his golden eyes flickering open in the torchlight. "What's wrong?" Lyra hesitated. Do you hear it? That voice. He sat up slowly, his muscles taut beneath the faint glow of the bond that now marked them both. Yes, he admitted after a pause. It started the night the bond sealed. It whispers your name, and mine. Their eyes met. Neither spoke for a long time. The fire crackled. Rain tapped against the window like distant footsteps. It wants us to lose control, Kael murmured finally. To let the bond consume us. Lyra's throat went dry. And if we do? Then the curse wins. She looked down at her hands. The faint golden shimmer along her skin pulsed in time with his heartbeat. We can't even touch without it answering. Kael's gaze darkened. Then we learned to resist it. But it wasn't that simple. As the moon waned, the tension between them grew unbearable. They trained together in the courtyard, sparred in the halls, studied ancient texts by candlelight, always close enough to feel each other's presence, never daring to linger too long. Every stolen glance felt like temptation. Every accidental touch felt like fire. One evening, after hours of failed attempts to decipher the curse's runes, Kael rose abruptly from the war table. The torchlight carved shadows across his face, proud, angry, beautiful. Enough, he muttered. The curse feeds on restraint. It knows what we deny. Lyra stood. And you'd rather give it what it wants. I'd rather understand what it is. He turned toward her, his voice low but burning. Every time I push it down, it pushes harder. You feel it too. She did. Gods, she did. Her heart thudded against her ribs, her breath shallow. The bond pulsed like a heartbeat between them, gold flickering along her skin in waves. Kael, she said softly, if we let it take control. He crossed the space between them before she could finish, stopping just a breath away. His scent, wild pine, smoke, and rain, surrounded her. I won't hurt you, he said. I'm not afraid of that, she whispered. I'm afraid of wanting it. For a heartbeat, silence. Then, softly, he reached up, his fingers tracing the air near her cheek, not quite touching. The heat from his skin made her tremble. Then don't, he murmured. Want the truth instead. The words hit her harder than touch. The truth. That he wanted her, that the curse wasn't just darkness, it was something that bound them deeper than any law or spell. The bond flared suddenly, bright gold. Kael staggered, pressing a hand to his chest. Lyra gasped as the light surged from her mark in answer, circling them in a halo of heat. Kael, she cried. He fell to one knee, growling in pain. It's not just desire, he ground out. It's anger. It's feeding on something else. Lyra dropped beside him, clutching his shoulders. What do you feel? Jealousy, he rasped, eyes wild. It's showing me visions. You, with someone else. I can't stop it. Kael, look at me, she said firmly. It's not real. He did, and for a moment, the alpha was gone. In his eyes burned the wolf, fierce and wounded. The bond pulsed like a heartbeat, their power colliding in waves of light and shadow. Around them, the torches flickered violently. Lyra's tears shimmered. You're stronger than this. Kael's hand gripped hers, trembling. Then anchor me. She closed her eyes. I'm here. The curse screamed through the bond, a sound like wind tearing through the soul, and then, slowly, it began to fade. The glow dimmed, the heat ebbed, and Kael slumped forward, panting against her shoulder. Lyra held him close. Neither spoke for a long time. When he finally lifted his head, the firelight reflected in his eyes again, no longer gold but amber red, a color Lyra had never seen before. It's changing you, she whispered. No, he said quietly. It's showing me what I really am. The next day, the castle changed. Servants whispered that the Alpha King's eyes now glowed even in daylight. The elders who came to test the wards found the runes pulsing faintly crimson instead of gold. And somewhere deep within the forest, wolves began to gather, answering a call no one else could hear. Kael stood at the balcony, watching the horizon darken. Lyra joined him, her hood drawn low. It's starting again, she said. He nodded. The curse isn't done. It's only waiting. Lyra's voice trembled. What if the bond itself is the curse? Kael turned to her slowly, his expression unreadable. Then maybe the only way to end it, he stepped closer, the bond humming softly between them, is to break it. Her heart clenched. If we break it, we die. He exhaled, a sound of weary defiance. Then we find another way. But deep down, they both felt it, the quiet, terrible truth that the shadow had returned, and this time, it wore their faces. The moon rose red that night. It hung over Valmora like an omen, bleeding its color into the clouds, staining the rivers crimson. The people locked their doors and whispered old prayers, but Kael and Lyra stood at the heart of the storm, two souls bound by something older than faith. The blood moon had always been a night of power, when wolves shed their restraint, when truth could no longer hide behind words. Tonight, it would demand payment. Kael sat alone in the council hall, the firelight tracing his sharp jaw and weary eyes. The air felt heavy, charged with the scent of rain and iron. Corin entered quietly, carrying a scroll marked with the royal seal. His expression was grave. "It's as we feared," he said. "The elders have traced the curse's origin." Kael didn't move. "Speak." "The curse was born from a pact, sealed 100 years ago, between the first Alpha King and the goddess of the hunt. He promised her a bloodline untouched by weakness. In return, every generation would give up one thing the Alpha loved most." Corin hesitated. "This time, the bond has chosen for you." Kael's grip on the armrest tightened. "Lyra." Corin nodded. "If you don't end it before the moon fades, she'll die. The curse will claim her heart to renew its power." Silence. Kael rose slowly, his shadow stretching long across the hall. "Then it's not a curse," he said quietly. "It's punishment." Lyra found him hours later on the training grounds, bare-chested, his skin streaked with sweat and ash. He struck at the air again and again, as if he could fight what was inside him. She approached, her cloak trailing behind her like smoke. "You knew," she said softly. He didn't turn. "It doesn't matter." "It matters to me." At her voice, he froze. Slowly, he lowered his sword, his shoulders heaving. "You shouldn't be here." "Because of the curse?" she asked bitterly. "Or because you're afraid of what it's showing you?" Kael turned at that, his golden eyes fierce in the torchlight. "Afraid." He laughed without humor. "Lyra, I see your death every time I close my eyes." Her heart twisted. "Then let me choose it, not the curse." He shook his head. "No. You don't understand. The pact demands the Alpha's surrender, not the Omega's. It's my blood it wants." She stepped closer, her voice trembling. "Then we face it together. I won't let you bear it alone." For a moment, neither spoke. The wind howled through the courtyard, scattering ash and petals around them. The bond pulsed faintly between their hands. Kael's voice was barely a whisper. "If I touch you now, I don't think I'll be able to stop." "Then don't," she said, the words slipping out before she could stop them. The air thickened. Their breath mingled. The bond flared like gold fire beneath their skin. Every unspoken word, every restrained desire, everything they had denied since the night of the curse came rushing back, threatening to drown them both. But before either could move, the sky roared. A shadow split the heavens, black lightning cutting through the red clouds. The ground trembled. From the heart of the forest came a howl so deep it seemed to shake the stars. Lyra's eyes widened. "It's here." They ran through the rain-soaked woods, the air alive with the scent of blood and power. The trees themselves seemed to twist toward them, their roots pulsing with dark light. At the clearing stood a woman made of moonlight, her hair silver as frost, her eyes burning red. The goddess of the hunt. The origin of the curse. Kael stepped forward, sword drawn. "End it." The goddess smiled. "End it? You think you can unmake what was sealed in blood and desire?" Her gaze slid to Lyra. "She is the key. The bond was never your punishment, Alpha, it was her awakening." Lyra's voice trembled. "What do you mean?" "You were chosen, little Omega," the goddess whispered. "Born with the mark that completes him. Together, you could have ruled the curse, if you had not feared your own fire." Kael growled. "She owes you nothing." "Does she not?" the goddess purred. "Then why does her heart burn every time she looks at you?" Lyra's breath caught. The goddess raised her hand, and suddenly Lyra saw flashes, visions of her own power, healing wolves with a single touch, calming storms, commanding the moon itself. But beneath it all, she saw something darker, herself, crowned in flame, Kael kneeling at her feet. "She could have been more than a healer," the goddess said softly. "But love made her weak." Lyra's eyes hardened. "No. Love made me human." The goddess smiled, and vanished. The forest went silent. Only the bond remained, humming between them, fragile and alive. By the time they returned to the castle, dawn was breaking. The blood moon was sinking behind the mountains, its red light fading into gray. Kael stopped at the gates, turning to her. If the curse demands a life, it'll take mine. Lyra shook her head fiercely. No. We'll find another way. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, his hand trembling. You once told me the bond feeds on connection. If I break it, maybe it will die with me. Kael, please. But he smiled, that soft, fleeting smile that had undone her from the beginning. You once begged me not to lift the cloth, he murmured. Now I beg you, don't stop me. Before she could answer, he turned, walking toward the altar in the center of the hall where the curse had first taken root. The runes blazed red as he stepped into the circle. The air thickened, the sound of ancient words filling the room. Lyra ran forward, tears streaming down her face. Kael, no. He looked back one last time, his eyes gold, steady, unafraid. For you, I'll end it. The light swallowed him whole. The sound that followed was not a scream, but a roar, a wolf's defiant cry that split the sky. The castle shook. The curse broke like glass. When the light faded, Kael was gone. Only the echo of his bond remained, faint, golden, pulsing against her heart. Lyra sank to her knees, clutching the air where he had stood. The mark on her chest glowed one last time, then dimmed. She whispered into the silence, her voice trembling but fierce. I will find you. Even if it takes eternity. And somewhere beyond the veil, a golden-eyed wolf lifted its head to the wind, and howled. The world after Kael's sacrifice was too quiet. Lyra woke each day to the hush of a kingdom in mourning. The bond's glow had faded to a single pulse beneath her skin, faint, like the echo of a heartbeat she could no longer reach. The people called her the blessed Omega, the one who broke the curse, but to Lyra the title felt hollow. She had not broken anything. She had merely lost him. Months passed. Spring returned to Valmora, soft and uncertain. Flowers crept from the cracks in the courtyard stones. Children played where the wolves once prowled. But Lyra remained restless. At night she walked the ramparts, whispering to the wind as if it might carry her words to the place where Kael's soul had gone. Sometimes, she swore she heard him answer, a low rumble in the distance, like thunder on a clear night. And then one evening, under a new moon, the sound came again, closer. She followed it beyond the castle walls, through the sleeping forest, until she reached the ruins of the altar where he had fallen. The stones still bore the scorch marks of his final stand. In the center, the runes glowed faintly gold. Lyra knelt, touching the earth. If you're still here, she whispered, show me. The ground shivered. A gust of wind swept through the clearing, swirling leaves and embers into a spiral of light. The air filled with a deep, familiar sound, a heartbeat that was not her own. The bond inside her flared, brilliant and warm, and she gasped. Kael? The light grew until she could barely see. For an instant, the shape of a wolf appeared, tall, golden-eyed, proud. Then it shifted, the outline blurring into a man's silhouette. When the brilliance faded, he stood before her, scarred, real, alive. Kael, her voice broke. He smiled faintly. You found me. She reached for him, afraid he would vanish, but his hand closed around hers, solid, warm, trembling. How? She whispered. When the curse shattered, he said quietly, it didn't kill me. It tore me apart, body from soul. But the bond, you kept it alive. It guided me back. Her eyes filled with tears. I thought I'd lost you. You did, he said, brushing her cheek with his thumb. And you called me home. Their foreheads touched. The gold of the bond reignited, flowing between them like sunlight through water, no longer a chain, but a living thread of energy. Lyra felt it hum in her veins, not burning, not binding, but belonging. This time, Kael whispered, it's not a curse. It's a promise. She nodded, her tears falling freely. Then promise me you'll stay. I swear it, he said. As Alpha. As man. As yours. At dawn, the wolves of Valmora gathered on the hills, their voices rising in a single long note that carried through the valleys, a song of return. The people awoke to see the Alpha King walking beside the Omega healer, hand in hand, light trailing where they stepped. Under their rule, the curse was never spoken of again. The bond became legend, a tale told beside fires, of two souls who faced darkness and found each other in its heart. And when the next blood moon rose, its light was no longer red but gold. That night, Lyra stood with Kael on the balcony overlooking their kingdom. The wind tugged gently at her hair, his arm rested around her waist. Below, the torches flickered like 1,000 small stars. Do you still hear it? She asked softly. The curse? She shook her head. The whisper. Kael smiled, leaning close. Only you. He kissed her brow, and the bond pulsed once, steady, calm, eternal. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, not in grief, but in celebration. And as the sound faded into the wind, Lyra closed her eyes and let the warmth of them, fill the space where silence used to live.